Good. All right, bet.
We get it.
All right. South by Southwest, what's going on? I'm JP, head of social at Wyden in Kennedy, New York. And today I'm joined by some stellar colleagues on this panel to talk about how to build great brand partnerships and avoid this concept of clout chasing. So before we introduce them or get them out on the stage, I'm just going to give you a little bit of download of where we at. So I'm gonna do the whole professional thing and read the abstract and shit, so everybody's up to speed. So real quick, younger generations have changed the definition of what successful influencer marketing looks like. They'll skip typical commercial breaks and bypass misguided celebrity campaigns because they can see interactions with advertising have changed drastically. From the De Beers brothers using movie stars to sell engagement rings in the early 1900s to McDonald's tapping musicians for their own signature meals, influencer marketing is a tactic as old as time. But while some executions are authentic and pack a punch, to light cultural ablaze or set the internet on fire, most of them have a tendency to fall flat. Today, you'll hear from myself and my colleagues, the minds behind successful partnerships like Post Malone and Bud Light, Beyoncé, Adidas, NBA, and AT&T's codes of culture, J Balvin and some of his Nike work. Influencer collaborations need to look like these are the architects of those. We're looking forward to having this conversation with you and really outlining what succeeds in influencer marketing today. So I'm gonna bring out my first panelist, Shayna Berry. Hey, Shayna.
Hello.
What
Good
up?
to be here.
Introduce yourself. Let the people know who you are.
Oh man, middle child, so I can go on. But Shayna Berry, head of music and entertainment for Anheuser-Busch, longtime beverage industry veteran, but have been doing some great work at Anheuser-Busch for the whole portfolio for the past 6 years. So super excited to be here with you guys.
Amazing. Then I'm gonna bring out, he'd kill me if I let out his government. So I'm gonna call him upscale Vandal. Can you come to the stage, my brother?
My man, people, the internet world might know me as Upscale Vandal, but my name is Michael Camargo. I'm the owner and founder of TVG, the Vandal Group. You might have seen some of our stuff on your favorite artist or at your favorite boutique or your favorite brand or your favorite restaurant. The point is we outside trying to make it so you don't know who we are and just enjoy your life and your products. And, that's what we're here doing today. We're talking to you about how to make that synergy come to life.
Fact. Hey, I got to say, I'm kind of glad that we're doing this virtually because if we were in person, you would have never made it to the stage. You've been caught up in the autograph line. You've been signed, lined up.
The one thing that's great about
That's why I was late.
Great about the digital thing is that the trolling is a lot easier.
Yeah, you just read them in the comments afterwards, right?
Yeah, well, because we would have been waiting for you to get that jacket from whatever designer made it for you.
Yo, give you relax. Hey, let's get to the next panel. Last but not least, my brother Joel Rodriguez. Please come on out representing Queens, man. Like turn
Queens, heavy 718. What's up, everybody? I'm Joel Rodriguez. I'm the executive director of engagement planning at Translation. Been there, about to hit my 10th year, which is crazy to say out loud, but proud. Got a lot of work to do, got a lot to give, and super excited to be on this highly esteemed panel with you all, and look forward to getting into it and speaking what we do, not just theory, but actual practice.
Indeed. Hey, gang, thanks for joining me today, man. I couldn't be more honored to share this space with you. We're going to talk a little bit about influencer partnerships and what they mean to us, what we've been responsible for, how they're shaping the culture. But let's start out with let's kick it off with some of our favorites. There are definitely an array to choose from. And we all have our personal favorites for different reasons. And they don't have to be anything that we personally worked on. And I can kick off by saying what my favorite was. I think I'm a Philly native. I grew up in Southwest Philly. And around, I think, 2001 or 2002, there was an Allen Iverson RBK commercial that had Jadakiss rapping and track masters in the backdrop. And this played like a music video, and it really changed my life. It changed how I viewed what influencer marketing might look like or feel like before there was even a term or a label for that. And I think it's one of the reasons why I'm doing what I do today. Quite frankly, it's like it accounted for a group or community that didn't typically feel represented in commercial advertisements. So that's my favorite. Let's go around the rodeo. Let us know what your favorite is. Shane, I'm gonna always put you first because I feel like my mom or my wife would like have my head if I didn't go ladies first on this. So definitely talk to us about what you appreciated.
And I'll spread it around, but I'm gonna give a shout out to a project that we actually just did at AB, but really it's a throwback to all the examples I think we're gonna give today. So hopefully everyone's seen the work, which is Stella and Palace. So that is a huge example that we're seeing is just driving a complete new perception of the brand and reaching an entire new audience. So it's really audience focused, and then really bravery, right? They have no business being with Palace. There's a certain respect within the industry. It's a cult brand. So very impressed with I didn't have much to do with that one. So I want to make sure it gets as much love as possible, and really showing the power of like, if two brands believe in each other and their ethos and what they aim to do, even though they're completely different when you get on that first meeting, those are the most exciting ones. So I loved that one recently.
Fire. Mike or Joey?
I mean, see, the thing I think with me is a little different due to the fact that I've had the blessing of being able to work, outside of a directed path, which I think is more challenging, which is why I respect, what you guys, Shayna and Joelle and yourself do, because it's very simple to only work on things that you love and you're moved by and you're inspired by. Yeah. And real talent shows when you're set up against that and you are forced to be imaginative and create a strong, fluid form of ideation on a product that you're not particularly super tied to, right? Mm-hmm. But that's the skill set. And I think that that's where you guys all, trump me in skill set, no use of that word, but, all of the things I've been fortunate enough to work on have been things that as a kid growing up, I was like, man, there's nobody that knows this product better than me. So I would say like one of my favorites has been, obviously J Balvin Jordan 1, being able to be a kid from Colombia to help the first Colombian, global music superstar have his first shoe deal and it be a Jordan 1, coming from losing my friends to the sneaker game in life and kids getting killed for sneakers, like that just holds a different type of relatability in the product, that when I speak to that consumer, I'm speaking to myself, so I would say that as far as like hallmark moments and things that I'm super proud of and putting out into the market, like, the J Balvin Jordan 1 was definitely one of the things that I'll always hold near and dear to my heart because of, what I came from and the lifestyle that kind of put me into this business, you know?
For sure. Fire.
Amazing. For me, I think back as like, a student of hip hop culture and, the early Sprite work for me is really what kind of connected. And, a lot of ways what you're saying, JP, like it didn't feel like an ad. You were memorizing commercials word for word, which is crazy. Like creatives and agencies and brand partners, they can't pay enough to get people to do that today. Right. So I look at the Obey Your Thirst work, specifically Nas and AZ sitting on the stoop, as a Queens kid, that nothing felt commercial about that. There's a girl doing hopscotch. There's the jump ropes, the Johnny pump, you know what I mean? It was like, this is my neighborhood. This looks like Corona. This looks like Flushing, right. You know what I mean? And what I really, really, really admired from that is how much was hidden in plain sight. It was like, if you knew, you really knew, and I learned that there was layers behind it. And the reference was Double Trouble from the old Wild Style movie. These are things like you peel back, or I peel back later as a student of it. But for me, it is that stuff that just lives in the gray space where you don't know if it's an ad or you don't know if it's just something that really struck a chord with you and connected on a personal level. So I have to date it back to that point as a young kid and really being struck by that.
Oh yeah, yo, I kind of love like in full transparency, Sprite is a client, but I kind of love the skin that Sprite has in this game specifically. It never really feels like clout chasing with a brand like Sprite. I think they've done a really good job at a long-standing programming that accounts for other characters and personalities in their work and articulations, and they've been doing it for a really long time. Maybe one of the first to do it. I think they get a lot of credit for, I think, dropping Curtis Blow in one of their first commercials, and he was probably the first rapper to get a commercial deal like that. So definitely like one of the OGs in the game. I'm glad you mentioned them because they deserve flowers for sure.
Especially in a game where it's done so incorrectly so often.
Yo, my guy going right at it. So let's talk about, I want to definitely talk about that.
Because you got to listen, if you're going to praise Sprite for being early, you got to also praise them for at least not going left.
Yeah.
You know, because my first client after leaving Rock Nation was a beverage company that'll go unnamed because we still get checks from them every now and then. But they done messed up a whole bunch.
Yeah,
they, you know, it's hard.
Disclaimer there.
It's difficult as somebody who's creating, you know, people always ask me like, what's the best way to, you know, describe marketing, you know, and like for us here, the motto is that like what we do at the Vandal Group is we create a language between a product and a consumer, right? We create the most formidable, palatable language in between these two worlds, right? That's our job. So when I see a company, which we see a lot, and I know that you guys see a lot, come with the wrong idea, and you not be able to talk them off that ledge, you have to understand that these are internal battles that the guys, like the people, will never see this portion of the battles. We're like, yo, don't do that. Yep. And then completely sabotage themselves. So it's like with somebody like Sprite and Joel talking about the tenure that they've done of, you know, not only doing the right type of marketing, but also making sure that they stood authentic to whatever Joel was pitching, making sure that he felt, you know, intrinsically, that whatever was intrinsically valuable to the ad was kept in. Like, that's a lot of stuff that gets cut out in the, like he said, in the cutting room, in the gray space that you don't ever know. And like, man, a lot of companies do it wrong, man. Like, people don't ever get to see the light of day. But as somebody in this industry, it's hard, man, because you like, I told y'all not to do that. I told y'all not to put that out.
That's right. That's absolutely right. The only way you can credibly do that as an agency, Mike, is if you had the right people at the table crafting that work. And we know that that's not always the case. I think one of the things that I definitely want to talk about is some of the aspects that we love and some of the work that we love. Like, you talk about language, Mike, that's a great place to start. I think, Joey, you and I, you would definitely reference a code, like the difference between a script, copy, words that you say out loud or that you believe in, and the actual code of the culture. I think one of these things you have to absolutely get right if you want to get influencer marketing right. Joel, maybe you could talk a little bit about code or what we believe that to be, because that language is not something that is widely understood, but I also know that translation is a shop that thrives off this.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a really important word, you know, and when you think about code, like in my mind, I always think about the word culture, and I replace the word culture with code because I think it's a lot more pointed, right? It's not just about the rules, it's about the groups, the belief systems, the rituals, the artifacts, the language, to Mike's point, that proves whether you get it or not. You know, do you know the code or not? And if you do know the code and you could speak with it, or you could speak with fluency to those codes, then you're going to be embraced. If not, you're going to hit a brick wall because it's going to be obvious that you don't know who these communities are or what they value. So I think like really putting yourself in the shoes of the audience. And, you know, a lot of people talk about empathy, but don't really exercise that. You know, you have to go to these communities, do ethnographies, like what is their day in the life? What are their pain points? What does their journey look like? And that's what's going to help you uncover the things that really matter to them, not just like trying to Google everything or do desk research and think you're going to crack the code. You know, it takes a lot more than that.
Yo, the Google shit will get you in trouble.
Yo, I'm crying at the Google.
It's true though.
Yeah, it's a fact. It's a fact.
We talk about it with your team a bunch. It's for all of our partners, like to say that in a different way, on a very specific tactic is talent copy, right? So we've got what we love is these detailed books, is day by day. This is what we want you to say when we're in campaign mode, and I love those templates. And we've had to get the teams away from, and we've seen the benefits of it. It's like, let them put it in the artist voice. Like, but these are the things we need to hit. It's like, right, we will make sure that happens, but we're going to do it with the nuances, right? If Posty's writing, he doesn't use caps, doesn't use periods. Use the fewest words possible. If it's Muluma, how is he going to speak, right? And we'll say, okay, fine, test it. Put one out there with how you guys want to do it, and one with the artist. Let's run them both dark and see how it goes. And more often than not, and it's not an I told you so. It's just a valuable trust us moment. And you see the engagement from like
Shayna, the funny thing about that people don't ever see in your position is that
argument to get it there.
I'm in the unique position where I've been on both sides of that table, meaning like if I'm on tour with Pusha and I'm handing all digital strategy, and then third-party agencies are sending me copy like, can Pusha tweet this? And I'm just like,
he would never say that.
I just want to know who over there
right?
that approve. Listen, by the way, Push is such a specific artist that he doesn't even do, paid promo, things like that, right? If there's a digital ask as a part of a bigger contract, it's the rare time you see him throw up something copy post, right?
Yeah.
But the thing that kills me is like being on both sides of that table, I'm like, you guys, somebody approved this size check. And whoever approved that size check didn't do the due diligence to make sure that whoever was running the project was gonna ask this guy to say this. That divide is way too crazy and way too unspoken for us not to talk about it right now, because kids don't see. Because kids, again, when I say kids, I'm talking about
21 plus
kids. Yeah. I'm talking about aspirational, hopeful people to get into understanding what it is that we do for a living.
Yeah. No,
so if you're watching this at South by Southwest, digital space, wherever you're watching this, know that when I say kids, all of us are still kids. We hopeful, we dreaming, we thinking. So when I say that, I'm like, man, if I put this out in the world, how many people read those captions and then you go into the comments? This is the worst thing as a marketer. If you go into the comments and they're like, get that bag, bro. Yo, get that money, bro.
Hashtag ad, bro.
Because if you knew that I'm paying him to say that this is a cool product, I fucked up.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And I think that goes back to our original point about like not having this thing not feel like an ad, like the Sprite work or the Reebok work or all of the work that we've been a part of. And Shane, I think you were alluding to something really smart, because this is kind of where it starts to go left at the beginning. That code that we subscribe to, like on the street or with some of our cultural heroes, and then the code of the brand, those things, if those things are not aligned, right, then you're already off to a shit show partnership. So like, let's talk about, like, because I feel like, and by the way, I heard you when Mike was going kids and you were like, yo, 21 plus, shout out to the Anheuser-Busch. The Anheuser-Busch and you was like,
shout out to my legal team.
She got that age restriction.
Yeah, she's like, yo, like if this thing is not age,
please fill in your birthday.
No, real rap though, we should talk, because AB's got it right on a few occasions, man. I think, look, AB rolled the dice. I was working with Joel at Translation, and we were working with Stout, and they rolled the dice on Budweiser Made in America, and the partnership was fucking chef's kiss. And I'm not just saying that because it was in Philly, but like,
anybody could say that.
That's right. That's right. It was amazing.
How many other Black-owned urban festivals pop up in two major cities with, this much prep? Like, bro, that doesn't happen. It's what, 7 years running now, 6 years?
That's right. That's right. It just doesn't happen.
That doesn't happen.
Yeah, and then like you guys got, I mean, Posty's one of my favorite. Another full transparency thing. Bud Light is also one of our favorite clients. Yeah. But Post Malone and Bud Light, it just feels like a partnership that was almost like written for you. It was like, oh man, God, this is this feels like a layup. Let's talk a little bit about like how this shit has to be aligned, because otherwise it's going to feel like #ad.
Well, to your guys' point, I mean, it started, the first interaction we had with him was we sent him a fridge.
Yeah.
Right? So it was the noisy interview that came out, and that was where Alec got famous as his beer bong holder, which you drink responsibly. But that's really where it all started. And I think that's still, yeah, we've done a lot of campaigns together, and I can talk about the details, but we still were listening to each other. Every year when we reset, we talk about what is something that Bud Light could do for you that no other brand could. Because all of us could write a check to an artist and we can do it, but it's why do we want to keep working together? So starting with a fridge and kind of collaborate, and first Dive Bar tour. I mean, since then we've launched his last 2 albums together. We've launched the most successful merch campaign that we've had at AB, and everything in between. I mean, we had circles for 4 weeks before it came out. I mean, those types of things come with a lot of discussion, between the teams of where an asset like that is going to live. It's huge. Mm-hmm. So I think there's, starting with the fridge and now we're here is kind of, it's really remarkable to see our second Super Bowl campaign together. I can't help him, headlining Coachella. I can't get him headlining gigs anywhere, but we can get him packaging. That's one of the beauties of AB. It's like, let's open up any avenue that's possible. There's nothing that's too big. I mean, doing 1 Super Bowl commercial is ridiculous. We've actually done 3 technically, because we did 2 last year. And so that doesn't come with, as you guys were saying before, the blood, sweat, and tears. It goes into like, trust me, this guy's going to be a thing. Let's make a bet. We all work on brands that are going to be around for the next 10, 20, 30 years and more. So we can kind of put chips around and say who we think is going to pay off in the long run, and who do we want to have these relationships with, Posty. They're now synonymous, and hopefully it's felt. We protected a bunch because to the point of this conversation, it's like, I won't do anything to let that go. And I try to instill that really in all the partnerships we have.
Oh yeah.
Shane, I was just going to say real quick. Yeah, I think you just said something that was really important, which was like, what can we do together that couldn't be done before, or, on our own, we couldn't have accomplished. And I think that's redefining partnership. It's not just about the endorsement. I think endorsements are dead. It's really about co-creation and ownership. Like another great example is Jay-Z and LVMH announcing today going into partnership on Ace of Spades.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like understanding your influence, which, he did when he denounced Cristal, and betting on yourself, investing in yourself, understanding your leverage. And here comes LVMH today to help amplify that whole
He said that years ago.
Yeah, he spoke it into existence. And it's not just about the endorsement. It's not just about, let me hold this product, let me do the sip shot. It's about ownership. It's about co-creation. These are things that I think are really going to help redefine what partnershies and influencer marketing looks like as we move forward.
Hell yeah. Hey, yo, I'm glad you
said that.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Joey, because this motherfucker probably has 4 bottles of AZ at the tip.
Damn, I knew it.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to all of those who are watching.
All right, I gotta go now. See that?
This is a good conversation.
That's great.
So let's talk about that too, because I feel like that's another pillar of successful brand partnership and what a successful campaign might look like from an influencer perspective. It's got to be that degree of co-creation and collaboration. I want to say in the creative space, right? Like usually when you're dealing with a creative partner, they are truly creative, right? Like we've mentioned we've mentioned Posty, Jay-Z, fucking Pusha T. Like these are actually creative geniuses in their own right. And we are usually on the hook for the creative output on like an agency side or a brand side, right? Like to what degree of freedom or should we leave inside of a framework that we create for some of our influential partners? Hey, Mike, I really want you to tackle this because we work together closely on the McDonald's and J Balvin famous order. And that shit went really smoothly because I think we came out of the gate understanding that this is going to be a collaborative process. Can you talk a little bit about how much that should be a law?
I mean, the thing is this, in the sense of like the process of it,
yeah,
you guys work completely different, right? Due to the fact that you have, you know, you're on the deliverable side of the table. There's a timeline, there's a target to hit. Yeah. So you guys actually have more of an infrastructural sequence set up that you need to kind of, I guess, stick to or harp towards once you're being creative. And that's difficult, which is, again, why I tip my hat to you guys, because I don't, as much as I do have to meet those deadlines, I'm more on the creative side. So it's like, hey, guess what? If it's not hot yet, if it's not perfect, if it ain't going, that deadline to mean nothing to me. You know what I mean? Right. I mean, and you know from us, because that McDonald's thing was fast. And it was no time. And for us to react, we had to make sure that, like, the process was like all my other ones. First, I had to make sure with the person involved, well, whoever the target person is, whether it's an audience, a brand, like, what are we exemplifying here? What are we extracting? And what is this particular avenue of marketing that we're approaching or that we're using? What is that showing to the public? How is that being drawn out and harped on as a part of the narrative? So that's the first thing I always do. And it's like, I always let the artist have all the room, because when we were talking about earlier about trying to say things in their own voice or bring in brand partnerships, there's a lot of artists that also, you said, don't have their own creative voice in certain spaces. They might be extraordinarily good at one thing, but when you're talking to them about this other thing, is hieroglyphics. Do they still want to cash that check? Yes. Do they still kind of like the product and are cool with aligning their name to it? Yes. But then they count on us to find the synergy between them. So I try to maximize the time to allow whatever idea, whatever concept, whatever narrative we're approaching to really marinate with the artist and say, you know what, you know, with the McDonald's thing specifically, you know, I know Balvin, and if it's one thing I know is that he's a health nut. He's so when you think McDonald's, right, and you think, it's like, yo, when do you eat McDonald's? It's like, I eat it once a month, but when I eat it, this is what I have, and this is like, I'm looking forward to that cheap meal where I'm slamming this, right? So it's like, how do I elevate with him not being a avid foodie and an avid, you know, McDonald's guy? How do I make it? Was like, well, what do you cherish like all things? His jewelry. That's his thing. It's like, this guy's collection of jewelry. It's like, yo, my album hit platinum. I got to make a piece for it. It's like, well, if you're harping on your one cheat meal being that glorious, you need to wear that shit around your neck. It needs to be the highest, you know, because for me to try to find little fake narratives for him to connect to McDonald's product, it's like, yo, of course everybody loves McDonald's. Yeah, that's easy. How do you enjoy it? Well, I don't enjoy it once a month. For the other 29 days, it's on my neck in all diamonds. You feel me? So it's like, you know, I always give that space that you're talking about. I just allow for the artist to be the artist. And I extrapolate what I want from when he's talking to me. So he could be telling me 90 ideas. I'm pulling pieces and pieces and pieces. And I'm like, you know what? This is the idea. Let's do this. Yeah. You know, same thing with the Jordan. The Jordan was, a lot of people think that shoe was like one concept. And a lot of people either loved or hated it, which I love, because that means polarizing product is the best. Okay. Yes. I don't want no in between. It's cool people. I hate it or I adore it.
Yeah. Right? Yeah.
But if you look at the album, look at the shoe, it took us 3 years to make that shoe and the process of 2 albums. Yeah. So how do we tell that story? It's like, damn, we have to tell a story that's 3 years old. How do we speed it up? It's like, all right, each portion of the shoe speaks to a certain part. Yeah. I couldn't force that. I couldn't speed that up. I had to let it come from him. So, you know, to answer your question, it's time. It's allowing. It's like when Jay said, you know, sometimes you just gotta have the right artist in the room, the right producer in the room, and leave the door open and let God in. And that's what I do. You know what I mean?
Hey, yo, I love that. I love that. And I think that's key in making a successful partnership, because a bunch of perspectives have to come to the table. A bunch of different, you know, objectives have to come to the table. And like, you know, Joel, we worked on like a number of projects on this front. It feels like, yo, honestly, everything that comes out of translation in that way is culturally charged in that way, honestly, because it feels like it's speaking on behalf of the audience it served.
But it is though.
Yeah, that's right.
That's why it feels that way. Because look at y'all. Look at the alumni of who's building these ideas.
That's right.
So again, one thing we need to drill home here is that as much gems, as much sauce, as much all of the secrets we could give you pale in comparison to you putting in the time, the work, and the authenticity of who you are into your labor, bro. So whoever's watching this, don't get fooled by the titles, by the jobs, by the art, the Basquiat's. Don't get fooled by none of that. Understand that it starts with how real and authentic you are to your art, to your craft. And as you can see from the people on this chat, what company they came from and what projects they're putting out. Those are the wheels, those are the cogs in the wheel that make the machine run. It's not rocket science why those projects hit. If Joel and JP is working on a project and they come from the nucleus of what we're speaking to, there's no way those projects can be fully off target. Feel me? So, make sure that when you speak about the machine, you speak about the wheels and the gears and the mechanisms that make it what it is. Because I agree with you. Translation is top of his class when it comes to that. But that's because Stout was real in what he came from. That's because he picked people to add value and represent where he came from. Like you, like Joel, like Yaya, like all the talent that has come from over there. And it's going to continue as such, as long as they keep having people that are authentic to the nucleus of what we're pitching here. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. And in fact, that agency is just on the hook for some really dope ass work for beats. You love me. This work was amazing. It was heralded, and I think it came at a perfect time. I mean, Beats is no stranger to the conversation that's happening in the culture, but this articulation felt a little different. And I'm bringing it up because it was definitely made by us and it was made for us. Joe, you should talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you teed it up right. Beats is a brand that's born of culture. It's not just in culture. Like Dr. Dre is not a headphone engineer. This guy was a world-class musician, and he understood there was a problem in the space, and he set out to conquer it. And they came to us with a very specific brief, like how do we reconnect with Black youth today? And that's a loaded question, and that's a loaded challenge in this context. So we pride ourselves in being obsessive over the details. Like the most minuscule thing, we want to really look at that from every angle and integrate it into the work if it's going to connect with the people. So this is post George Floyd, post Breonna Taylor, Elijah McClain. Like it was nonstop, man, back to back to back to back. And we were looking at the brand and we're like, this is a moment that is really bigger than headphones. How do we use our platform to say something that needs to be said, to say something that's provocative, but not for the sport of being provocative? Mike, I love what you were saying. You love it or you hate it. It makes you feel something at the end of the day. And I always like to think of it as like, you're either striking a chord with the people if you do it right, or you're striking a nerve with the people if you're doing it right, because it's not for them. But that just says you're clear on who this is for and who this is not for.
Hey, Joe, before you go on, I just want to say, like, when Wyden was doing the Kaepernick shit, I think we were walking around the hallways and it did exactly that. And then we would say to each other, like, yo, listen, if people aren't now when we're looking at work like that, or that should fall in a realm like that, if people are not burning your sneakers in their backyard, you're doing something wrong.
I love that.
Like what Joey said about it being also knowing who it strikes incorrectly is a part that most people overlook. Yeah. So the fact that he said it'll strike a chord with the people that it's supposed to, and it'll strike a nerve with the people that you need it not to, that's the glaring part that people miss.
Yeah, of course.
It's like our election, right?
Yeah.
50-something% of people were still voting on some wild stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what we need to be alert of. It ain't the 50 that we know we voted for the right thing.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in this product. When we do a commercial, when we do a product or a collaboration, we have to keep our eye more on that people that we struck a nerve with. because are they the dying consumer? Are they the future of consumership? Even if their opinion is wrong, are they more voluminous?
Yeah.
Do they mean more at the register to our client than the one who's culturally relevant? That's a big overlooked problem. And it's a problem that us as creatives in a space where we're dealing with a lot of social injustices, where we're dealing with a lot of, uphill corporate battles of changing the guidelines of what a corporate boardroom looked like. We're dealing with that as professionals, but we're also regular humans, bro. Like, as much as this is a business idea panel, like, we're all 5 creatives from somewhere representing something, our own ideals, our own passions. And like, it comes out in our work. It's like any other sport you play. Like, this is a sport. I know when JP feel like somebody putting pressure on him and he go and put that fourth quarter up and Wyatt and Kennedy getting every headline on ad week and that, like, I know that I as a professional in my field, I have to pay attention to those things. But I also have to keep paying attention to what I'm doing incorrectly. I need to keep taking accountability for all the missteps I've made, for all the bad ideas I've pitched. Like, we don't talk about the people we strike a nerve with. We only talk about the people we strike a chord with, and that's a big problem that we have in this industry.
Hell yeah, we're gonna charge them for the gem you gave them too, Joey. Like, I hope they wrote that down when they see this, like, because that's
they listening. I mean, I know I'm listening, so I know they listening.
And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Joey. Go ahead, finish.
No, it's all good. I think there's a lot of valid points that are being brought up, and at the end of the day, when we talk about influencers, to me that just means one thing: do you have the ability to drive action? It's not just, are you the most famous person for this specific message? Can you make somebody do something? And our casting for the Beats story was very intentional, and how we positioned them was very intentional. There's superstars in that spot, but there's also regular, everyday Black people, and the message was, let's be shoulder to shoulder, eye to eye, heart to heart. Black people is more important than popular culture. Like, it's the most famous export in the world, but let's not lose sight of the humanity. So that was the big message. It was, do you love me like you love my culture? And that connected with the talent on a really personal level as well. Naomi wasn't holding a racket in the spot. Lil Baby wasn't in front of 12 million people. Like, he was getting his hair twisted, and it was like really personal moments that just told that story. And to the point about who it's for, check the box. Who it's not for, we're actually going to put this on TV during NFL Thanksgiving. We're going to force a conversation that has to be had. You got to watch it. This is going to be uncomfortable, but we have to talk about it. And that was the whole strategy behind that story. And I'm super proud of the execution and all the details that went into it as well.
Bro, I'm super, listen, I was mad happy when I saw that work, because one, I see myself in it. I think it felt like work that was holding up a mirror to what was actually happening and serving as a voice of the people, specifically my people. So I was mad proud of that. And then to find out that you guys had your fingerprints all over it, it was like a no-brainer to me. It made so much sense. So, like, kudos to you and salute to the team for putting that work together. Yo, Shayna, I want to get you back in the mix, because, like, I gotta say, like, this is heavy stuff, and things can go left sometimes. Like, it's a scientific approach. You got to definitely make sure that your brand conviction is aligned with the code of your influencer partner. Joe, you mentioned a really good point about how advertising in general is a persuasive tactic. It's designed to, make people take action. And that can sometimes be taking your ass to a cashier and buying this product, or believing in this service, or adopting this language, or even placing value on whatever this artifact is. I think we kicked this conversation off talking about the De Beers brothers and engagement rings. That is advertising. Shayna, how much should we account for our audience in influencer marketing? Like, should we allow them to sit in the driver's seat? Like, are they ultimately the casting director, if you will, for our influencer partnerships, like, should we be actually listening to them? And I'm asking you this question because I think as storytellers and even as client partners, we have a goal in mind. Our objective is right in front of us. And we can sometimes have tunnel vision and get into that objective. And there's a tendency to discount the audience. There's a tendency to not really account for their mindset, their feelings, their thoughts, their language, all of the things that they believe in. How much value should we place in actually accounting for them in the creative collaboration process, especially when it involves bringing in an influencer?
Yeah, I mean, so many thoughts I have just relating to what you guys were saying before, and to this. It's over the last couple of years of seeing us shift. You know, people know AB of big TV, right? And that's in large part a lot of the incredible award-winning work that we've done with Widen and our other partners. But what we've seen and the shift in culture is that it's the influencers. Let's use it as a blanket term, right? From celeb to someone who's got a good following.
Yeah.
Even from 1,000 followers, if it's every one of those followers is the person I want to talk to, that's okay, right? And kind of that pendulum is really, really important to us. And now we're seeing campaign after campaign that it's their posts and their voice that is driving the narrative and the brand love, and is going to make them pick us when they're shopping. And I think we forget about that a bunch. My first job, I was a sales rep. I had 116 accounts in Hartford County, right? Like I had the shit. I had a terrible route. Yeah. But looking back, every campaign I've done since then, everything we do at AB, it's like, is that person that's like going into the shop going to care about this influencer program? A lot of the times, no, because we're buying it. But oftentimes when it's right, like you see with Presidente and A-Rod going in, he's literally the delivery man because he wants to do that, right? It's incredible. Like you can't write that in, but we're reshaping our deals to be partners and shifting the perception of the check to I want to work with AB and AB brands because I saw what they did with X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
I want to have that platform, and I trust that they're going to allow us to bring that, and I'm going to bring my full me. Yeah. And kind of going back to what you're saying, Mike, is like every single time we're, all right, who's the director, who's the creative, who's the photographer? I'm like, it's the artist team.
Yeah.
Because A, we're not going to be up over in the overnights doing the approvals. B, we already know that like Adam wants to shoot with post. We already know Fra wants to, they already, with Maluma, it's like, it's already their natural habitat. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, the brand sees that I'm a creative and they want to hire my team.
Hell yeah.
That's a whole, like all of a sudden it unlocks all this different conversation. Just the fact that we want to do that together. Same thing with Lenny and the Stella campaign recently. It's like, now let's shoot with Mark. Like we love who's being recommended, but that just opens the door. All of a sudden they're like, all right, they hear me. Even if we don't agree on what the shot list is, it's already like, they already know my lighting that I want. They know my hair and makeup. They know where I want to be seen. Yeah. So important for us. And I think those are a couple examples we've seen recently that, it helps, shout out to all my brand teams listening, and it helps. And I think they're seeing that now. So it's like that persistence of being a creative partner and seeing what we can do for them has been a huge, huge game changer.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to like the way it ties into the audiences, in that like all of those things that you mentioned about, how you formulate this thing, how you bring it to life, how this creative execution is acutely articulated and served up to its audience. Those are details. And Joey, I know you have a perspective on details about, how the audience perceives those. Like you should probably touch on that a little bit too, because it's easy to just be like, yo, we want you to work on our campaign. You work on our shit. Here's a check. And we can be creative collaborators, but it gets closer to the finish line. And the closer you get to the finish line, the closer you have to look at these articulations. Yeah, I know you've experienced this.
100%. And back to the whole detail obsession, the one line that always sticks with me is the details matter to the people who matter, right? So spend time on the details. Back to the beats work. There was a moment with Naomi Osaka where she literally doesn't say anything. And the moment just shows her looking at a painting of Toussaint Louverture during the Haitian Revolution.
Or,
bro, we didn't say, she didn't deliver a line. She's just staring at that painting and how loaded it is and how it touches part of her identity. Yeah. And back to the ability of driving action. You look at the YouTube comments and a bunch of the posts that day, you'll just see Haitian flag emojis littered throughout the whole thing. And it was like, I feel seen, I feel heard. And we didn't even have to say a word. But again, back to Mike's point, the reason that worked was because of the collective, because of the detail obsession. The lead creator's name is Castro, and he's a young Haitian man. He's the lead creative of this project. And
that is amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, and that perspective is not, again, something you could just Google. You have to have the lived experience. You have to really care about the communities that you're trying to touch. So care about the details, because it matters to the people you're really trying to connect with.
Fact. And then when it does hit, and this goes back to the polarizing product point that you were making earlier, Mike, is in that, like, when that shit hits and you have a polarizing perspective, you build a hive, man. And the hive is what leads to, like, this shit sold out, or this shit's going again on StockX for 10X or whatever. And people can't wait for the next rendition or the next run of this shit. You've been a part of a lot of that. Yo, you should talk about what that feeling is like when you really get this shit right. Cause getting it right, it doesn't have to be lightning in the bottle. That's why we're talking right now. There are definitely rules of the road that you should probably fucking follow if you want to smash. But, like, talk to us about that feeling when it is a successful album.
I mean, honestly though, like I said, man, the one thing that I can never give people is a watered down version of myself or the truth. And being completely honest, man, like, a lot of this successes in what I've done had a lot to do with, man, like, just not shaking or quivering or bending on what I thought was the right way to do it. And I've been fortunate enough to only have projects in my path that allowed me that creative freedom. Again, I worked at Rock Nation. I've worked at companies. Like, I can't fit in the construct of how to get these ideas from inception to fruition all the way through, and not cutting corners on all the things that we have to in corporate America, and still have that success. So, like, when you asked about the influencer thing, like, that's an uphill battle I faced myself, because probably till this day, a large majority of the people that follow me just think that I'm some Instagram influencer. But here's the funny thing. If you go on my page, if you see any paid promotion on my page, any that you think is paid promotion, 9 times out of 10, it's not paid promotion, meaning I just did it all, me organically promoting something I'm aligned with. Or 2, I ran all of the entire creative project for that rollout and decided, as a part of something I stand by, to also promote that. Don't get me wrong, there's been companies that have like, hey, we want you to run this program, but can you also post it on your independent? And there's been times where I'm like, yeah, sure, that's an extra bag. Or I don't want to post it because it's not something that I'm in the vibe for. Although I gave you all the sauce for it, it doesn't feed with my current aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is this: people now are democratizing what influencership is online, right? We know this at all agencies. Micro influencers are fetching far more than macro influencers, far more than large numbers. We way rather stay with smaller numbers that are easier to penetrate their markets. And why is that? Like what Joel was saying, you speak to a kid in Corona, Queens, right? Now, this big company, this huge company is spending, let's say, $500,000 in spend on media, content, aggregating, influencer marketing for this demographic of kids 18 to 25, right? But you're a kid in Queens, 22 years old, in the middle of hip hop culture, living in Corona, versus a kid who lives in Indianapolis, in Boise, Idaho, in those places where Shayna was saying she had a terrible delivery route. Those two kids may go to a high school with the same amount of students, same amount of kids in their class, but because one lives in the nucleus of culture and the other one lives in a place that's absorbing vibes from everywhere, surrounding areas, which one has more brand appeal and brand value? And how do you segregate and speak to one authentically without alienating the other? So what I say about us having, like me having a little bit of a cheat code in this space is that when I put out a project that goes 10 times over what the retail was on StockX, or when I put out an item that sold out in 90 seconds, I'm speaking to the 1% of the people that I know that will trickle the idea off into the rest of the kids. And it's very specific and very dialed in of an approach. And again, this is why it's polarizing, because people are like, man, that one kid, you speaking to that one kid over 5,000 who have money to spend. And it's like, yeah, you're right. I'm not going to ring the register with 5 immediate transactions at this link, but I'd rather get 20,000 swipe ups amongst a group of kids where 5 of those kids can influence all of the boroughs in New York. Because what's going to happen is 4 months down the line, when it's a trend in New York that wasn't paid for at my register, the kid in old Boise, Idaho is going to go to Foot Locker and try to copy the copy version of my shit. And he's going to be spending. It just takes a little longer. So you have to educate the company on thinking, hey, longevity versus immediate impact, real roots versus a shaky foundation, one-time transaction versus a lifelong customer. You know, these are the things that people who want to be the hype crowd, the StockX crowd, don't ever think about.
That's a fact.
You think, listen, I sold this hat, right?
I
sold on network. We sold 500 hats in 90 seconds. I made them just because people was asking me on Instagram, right? They asked me to come right back and drop.
Of course.
2 years and I haven't dropped it. Why? Because right now this hat's going for $400, $300 on StockX, and the 500 singular kids that have them have made it so that now everywhere I go, people ask me about it.
Fact.
So what did I get in brand equity versus my 500 measly hats versus me saying I can sell 3,000 of these right now if I wanted to.
That's right. It's this idea of like social currency, man, and really that our job as responsible marketers, especially in this space, like this influencer marketing space, or when we're trying,
you could call it nasty. You was gonna say that in this nasty, unscrupulous digital world we live in.
It's super nasty in here. I think like our job is to really account for that, like really, really plan for that. I mean, I think we spend a lot of time doing that, and if we're not doing it enough, we absolutely should be doing it more. This is the work to be done, and I think everything else, if you start there, kind of falls into play. So look, I know we are almost up on time. Before we lace up with like takeaways from the conversation, I just want to go around and get like final thoughts, because I think this was a super rich convo. I love the vibes in here, and I think we gave out more gems than South by Southwest can handle. We all need Vandal hats. We all need
South by better have us back next year.
Like have us back.
We need the whole big chair set up. We need JP to get that big Magneto chair from X-Men.
I need the Magneto chair. I need the LVMH Ace bottle. I need all of this.
South by Southwest next year, we coming back live, baby.
Yo, but look, let's get closing thoughts. Shayna, definitely tell me how you feel, how you want to let the people go.
I mean, our biggest thing is the theme. It's the authenticity, it's the bravery to work in the overnights, push your idea forward, and it's going to take some time, most of the time. And then artist creative teams. It's one of the biggest things. Is listen to they are creatives in themselves, and I think it's been super successful, and hearing from the team here, it's kind of validating to say, yeah, on the flip side, it's true, is they want to be heard out, and I'm excited. Maybe we'll collab on something.
Oh, yo, let's go crazy. They don't want us to collaborate on something.
They don't want that.
They don't want that. Yo, Mike, hit us with the closing thoughts. Tell me how you feel. What are the last gems you want to give to people, man?
In closing, man, for any kid watching this, there's 3 things I want you to take away. Don't let any corporate company, don't let any institution that you don't have any ownership in dictate what your idea flow and what your thoughts and your dreams are. That's number 1. I don't care who you go work for, Apple, Nike, Google, all your favorites, Jordan Brand. Remember that what you have up here and what you've gone through and experienced and your wealth of knowledge is your equity. Don't let them take that from you. That's
right.
one. Two, you can't fake this. There's no easy button. There's no buying followers. There's no buying accounts. There's no speed track onto doing, creating projects that express your vision and your passions. And, you know, if you really want to be a part of this, you got to go and learn all the things that we spoke about. Go and study them. Put the time in your craft. Don't just call yourself marketing and creative. That creative director term, y'all got to cut that out.
Yo, it's too many creative directors out here.
Yeah, y'all got to chill. If y'all ain't a creative director, if you can't put numbers on the board and show me the direction of your creativity, don't call it. And lastly,
yo, you just hurt a lot of feelings. Damn.
But not least, before I leave, man, all I got to say, man, is just stay true to you. The coolest person you could be is yourself.
Fact, big fact.
Not what you see online, not what you see from rappers. Be you. Everybody that's in these little squares that y'all watching is where they are because they was themselves to the fullest extent, and they kept it tried and true, and nobody could tread on their name. So make sure you keep that same energy.
Big fact, big fact. Hey, Joey, summarize your gems for us, man.
I'll leave you guys with two. One I already said, and again, it's the details matter to the people who matter.
Yes,
you know, so pay attention to the details. I want to credit my man Reg Knock for kind of laying that groundwork and those principles with the early Sprite work and beyond. The stuff he's doing with LVMH today, crazy.
Yep.
The second piece I really want to make sure I land before we bounce is the idea of authenticity and that word. You know, I think all of us here can say it because we know what it means. We come from it, we exemplify it, we live it, we embody it. I think it gets dangerous in a boardroom setting because you're talking about people who are trying to validate authenticity and they don't come from these cultures. So the one thing I'd like us all to challenge the boardroom with is betting that work if you don't come from that culture. I think the solution I would offer up is the word consistency. I think consistency is a lot more measurable than authenticity, especially, again, if you're not part of said culture. Does this person have the receipts? Can you check their track record? How long have they been about this one thing? And I think it becomes way less subjective and way more rational and objective and something you could go measure at the end of the day. So I'd like us all to challenge that word. We are in leadership positions and it's dangerous when used in the wrong context. So those are the two things I want to make sure we leave behind.
Hey, yo. Well, gang, I got to say, this one was super, super fun to facilitate. I think it was an amazing conversation, and I can't pay you enough for all of the gems that you left up here on the stage. Thank you very much, Shayna. Mike, Joel, thank you so much for joining me in this. And South by Southwest, it was a pleasure to take up space.
See y'all next year. For real. Don't play with us. Don't act like these views ain't about to go crazy. South by Southwest.
Season 2.
Gang.
Season 2.
All right, Sanam, you think you got